In this video, we're going to see how the foreground and background colors work in Photoshop Elements. You know, those two squares located below the toolbox? Hi, I'm Rick Peterson from EssentialPhotoshopElements.com. Let's go over to Elements and get started. I'm using Photoshop Elements 2018 for this video, but the foreground and background colors work the same in other versions as well. The foreground and background colors are located at the bottom of the toolbox. They are these two overlapping squares. The one on top, the black one, is the foreground color, and the square below it, the white one, is the background color. There's also this double-headed curved arrow, which you can use to switch the foreground and background colors. For example, right now they're set to their default colors, with the foreground color being black and the background color being white. If I click on the double-headed arrow, which I'll do, the foreground color will become white and the background color will become black. The square on the top is still the foreground color and the square on the bottom is the background color. They just switched colors with each other. There's one other icon with the foreground and background colors, and that's the smaller overlapping squares. This can be clicked on to restore the foreground and background colors to their default colors of black for the foreground color and white for the background color. We changed them from their default colors when we clicked on the curved arrow to switch them. So now I'll click on the small square, and you can see that they go back to their default colors of the foreground color being black and the background color being white. I almost never use the curved arrows or the tiny squares because there's a keyboard shortcut that I use instead. To switch the colors, instead of clicking the curved arrow, you can press the letter X on your keyboard. I'll do that now. And you can see that they swap colors. If I press X again, they'll switch back. So pressing X toggles the foreground and background colors back and forth. The keyboard shortcut I prefer to use to set them to their default colors instead of clicking on the tiny squares is pressing the letter D for default. So I'll press D. And they return to their default settings of black on top and white on the bottom. If you press D when they're already at their default settings, nothing will happen. The foreground color determines the color of the drawing tools like the brush tool, the paint bucket tool, and the pencil tool. It also determines what color your text will be when you add text using the type tool. The foreground color also determines what color a shape will be when you use the custom shape tool. You can change the color of the foreground and background colors to any color you want. Just click on the one you want to change. So I'll click on the foreground color, and that brings up the color picker. Now I can choose whatever color I want from the color picker. So I'm going to choose a red, and then click OK to close the color picker and accept that change. And now you can see my foreground color is red. I can change the background color in the same way. First, I'll click on it to bring up the color picker, and I'll make it a blue this time. And then click OK to close the color picker, and you can see that my background color is now blue. So remember I said that the foreground color determines what color some of the tools use. For instance, if I switch to the brush tool by clicking on it in the toolbox, and I'm just going to pick a hard-edged brush here and make it a little bigger so we can see it. So now if I click and drag with the brush tool, you can see it's using that red that our foreground color is. Also, if I go to the custom shape tool and click on that, and you can see in the tool options that the color is going to be red. And if I click and drag to draw that shape, it is indeed red. And if I go to the text tool, now in older versions, when you would click on the text tool, the color would show up as red here right away. I don't know the last few versions of Photoshop Elements if it's a bug, but I've noticed that when I first click on it, it's black, the default color. So if I just click on the foreground color, and the color picker comes up. If I say OK, now you can see that my text tool turns to red. If I were to click to set some type, and then I'll just type test. I'll move it over there and turn off the bounding box. You can see that the type goes into that red that we set the foreground color to also. I'm going to undo most of the actions that I perform so we can get back to normal here. As I pointed out, you can use the color picker to change the color of the foreground and background color, and I actually have a video that shows how to use the color picker, so if you want to check that out, I'll link to it below this video. Now let's look at what the background color affects. The background color is what's used by the eraser tool when you erase with it on the background layer. However, if you use the eraser tool on a regular layer, it doesn't use the background color, it just erases to transparent. To demonstrate, I'm going to duplicate the background layer by pressing Command J on a Mac, or it would be Control J on a PC. So I'll do that now. You can see over in the Layers panel, we now have an exact duplicate of the background layer, and it's named Layer 1 by default. And I'll make the eraser tool active by clicking on it in the toolbox. And I'm going to make it a little bigger, just so we can see it better. By the way, to make it bigger, I'm just pressing the right bracket key on my keyboard. First of all, I want to erase on the background layer, so I'll make it the active layer by clicking on it. I need to hide the visibility of layer 1 because it's on top of the background layer and it's covering it up. So we won't be able to see the effects that the eraser tool has on the background layer. To turn off the visibility of layer 1, all we have to do is click on its eye in the Layers panel. So I'll do that now. You can tell that layer 1's visibility is off because of the red diagonal line going through the eye. Now I'll use the eraser tool on the background layer to click and drag with it over in the active image area. So I'm just going to click and drag. And you can see that it erases the pixels of my photo and replaces them with the background color, which in this example is blue. Next, I'm going to make layer 1 visible again by clicking on it, on its eye. So I'll click right on the eye, and you can see the red line goes away. So now in the active image area, we're seeing layer 1. And I'm going to use the eraser tool again, but I need to make layer 1 the active layer. I'm going to just click and drag diagonally again. So I'll click and drag, and we don't see anything. Well, that's because we're seeing through layer 1 to the background layer. So I need to hide the visibility of the background layer so we can see what we did to layer 1. So again, I'll click on the eye, but this time for the background layer. And it gets the red diagonal line going through the eye, indicating that its visibility is off. And now in the active image area, you can see where I clicked and dragged, instead of replacing the pixels that I erased with the background color, we see a gray and white checkerboard pattern. In Photoshop Elements, that checkerboard pattern is Element's way of showing transparency. So in other words, it just erases those pixels and becomes a transparent area on that layer. So now you know that if you use the eraser tool on a regular layer, the pixels that you erase are replaced by transparency, and if you use the eraser tool on the background layer, the pixels are replaced with whatever the background color is. Usually it's set to its default color of white, so when people open up an image and they use the eraser tool, it turns white. I'm going to revert back to the original state of my photo to show you one more thing that the background color is used for. To revert back, all I have to do is go up to the Edit menu and click Revert. And now I'm back to my image the way it was when I first opened it. The other thing the background color is used for is to fill the new space that's created when you expand the canvas area of your photo. Typically, when you open a photo in Photoshop Elements, the canvas size is the exact same size as your photo, but you can make your canvas bigger than your photo. To do that, you can go up to the Image menu and choose Resize and Canvas Size by clicking on it. When you do that, the Canvas Size dialog box appears. The dialog box shows the width and height of our canvas, which is the same as our photo. Notice down at the bottom of the dialog box, there's a field called Canvas Extension Color. That field defaults to whatever your background color is, and you can see it even shows a little swatch of blue, which is our current background color. Now you can pick a different option to make your canvas extension by clicking on the field and making a different choice from the pop-up list, but it defaults to your background color. I'm going to make my canvas 10 inches wider by changing my width from 27.347 to 37.347. And you can change which side you want the extra canvas added to by using this grid down where it says anchor, but I'll leave it in the middle so it'll divide the extra canvas size evenly on both sides. I'm going to change this 2 to a 3. So it's 10 inches bigger, and I'm going to leave my anchor in the middle so it'll be divided on both sides. And now I'll click OK to close the canvas size dialog box and accept the change. And you can see it added 5 inches to both sides of my photo. There's another way you can change your foreground and background colors besides using the color picker, and that's by using the color picker tool. And in older versions of Photoshop Elements, this tool was called the eyedropper tool, but it works the same way in all versions. I'll make it the active tool by clicking on it in the toolbox. It's this tool that looks like its old name, which is an eyedropper. It's right here. Now I'll click on it to make it active. Now with this tool active, I can click anywhere in my photo, and whatever color I click over on my photo becomes the foreground color. So I'll click on this purple bottle. Go right here, and you can see my foreground color change to that purple. You can also use this tool to choose your background color from the photo, but to change the background color you have to hold down the Option key on a Mac, or it would be the Alt key on a PC as you click. I'm on a Mac, so I'll press and hold the Option key, and then I'm going to click on this green leaf. And you can see when I do that, my background color has now turned to that green. So if I get my eraser tool from the toolbox by clicking on it, and then I click and drag over my photo in the active image area, it erases to that green color. So that about wraps it up. I hope that gives you a better understanding of what the foreground and background colors are and some different ways that you can use them. Until next time, this is Rick from EssentialPhotoshopElements.com saying take care.